Why do they hate white people, English people? Is it jealousy? Is it envy?
Peninsula called Europe, with that island on top of it, England, just dominated the world for 400 years.
And when you're on top, everyone wants to take you down and grab what you have.
The two chapters I'm actually researching at the moment, and I just want to see what you think about this. The two chapters I'm researching at the moment, I've not even started writing them yet. One is about jealousy and envy. Why do other people who are classed as non-white, why do they hate white people, English people? Is it jealousy? Is it envy? Is it other people are looking at the success of the, let's call it the white race or English people, and going, they've been a lot more successful than my ancestors. Am I shameful of that? Am I jealous of that? And therefore, is that the reason why I want to attack them? And the next chapter is really about self-hate. Why do we have white people, English people hating themselves? Jumping on board some of this woke nonsense that white people are inherently evil. White people are the most violent people, the most violent race on earth. White people invented slavery, even though, the first recorded history of the world, Sumeria, Egypt, were not white people. They all had slaves. Transatlantic slave trade, those people were sold into slavery by black people, by their neighbors. But why slavery only a white evil? What do you two gentlemen think about those two chapters?
No, your instincts are our instincts too. So we have sections on why, the big what. Why would they hate us so much? And we spend some time on that. For example, our approach was to say maybe it's because we were so successful. So the English Empire at one stage controlled 25%, a quarter of the land surface of the world. The sun never set on the English Empire, on the British Empire. We made a lot of enemies. We ruled over people. So we came into contact with a lot of people too. So they had the opportunity to hate. And we know that from social psychology that when in doubt, ethnic groups tend to have stereotypes of one another and often not to like each other very much. It's called xenophobia. It's a psychological characteristic. It's not abnormal. It's just normal. So that could be one set of reasons. You've given two more sets of reasons, and it sounds interesting. We didn't explore those possibilities, but my own approach as a political scientist is to think about things like power and process, and what where the world over the last 400 years has it's been transformed by European exploration and colonization and trade and technology and so on. This little peninsula called Europe, with that island on top of it, England, just dominated the world for 400 years. And we're coming off that now. We have the rise of superpower China. We have India rising, huge populations and industry, and people have decolonized. And so I think there's a lot of the psychology one would expect with them still not only decolonizing. I think they've had long enough to do that, to be honest. I think they've had long enough psychologically. Now they're playing games, and it's not them, it's various intellectuals who are playing games in creating this, for example, whiteness ideology. It's really silly. Why not yellowness? What are the advantages of yellowness or Chineseness or Indianness? As if ethnic nepotism is not completely normal. Everyone does it. I mean, but only in the eyes of these left-wing sociologists, it's only English people or white people in general. So I tend to look at it in terms of power. And I'll hand over to you, Harry.
Yeah. So I agree with you about the power thing. And one thing I find with whenever a government changes, like when Trump came in, he blamed Obama for everything. When Biden came in, he blamed Trump for everything. A new government will always try and blame the people before for the faults. Idi Amin used to call himself the conqueror of the British Empire. It was like, these were awful people and I conquered them, no matter how bad they are. So I spent a bit of time in India. And I used to meet some of the older guys who, this is back in the 80s. And so the older guys had actually, a few of them come to me and say, hey, I used to work with the English. Oh, you're English. And when they find out, oh, you're English. I used to work with the English when the British Army was here. And I remember a guy saying, he said, when the English were here, he said to me this in all seriousness, he really looked at me in the eye. He said, when the English were here, he said, if someone had come and killed me, it would be investigated. They'd try and find them. If they found them, they would hang them. He said, today, if someone came and killed me, they'd pay a $50 bribe to the police chief and there's nothing else to be ever heard of it. So the people that were around at the time generally had, I found, quite a good attitude, a good impression of the English. But the leadership, when they come in, they want to disparage them. All of our problems were all caused by colonization, which is, I'm sure there might have been problems caused by colonization, but it gets overblown, completely overblown, because the people in power, they've got the that's their thing to overblow it, to blame everybody else. So I think that's one big factor. And the other thing is that, like Frank said, we were on top. And when you're on top, everyone wants to take you down and grab what you have. How do you do that? Well, obviously they're not military or haven't been militarily capable of taking us down. So there's this psychological sniping to try and make us feel, it's basically guilt trip us into giving away our position. I think there's a big part of that, which has been, again, from academics, from a collective of people. It's been, people will point at this group or that group. It's all these guys or it's all those guys. I think it's been what's the word for it? A collective, a group agreement between people to become allies against us. And it's often people who hate each other. But it's like when you have the Sunnis and the Shias fighting in Iraq and the Americans turn up, they all stop shooting each other and everyone shoots the infidel, I think there's been a big part of that. So I think it's in our natural character to fairness is in our natural character and not wanting to see people downtrodden. And they found that if they claim downtroddenness, which is pretty easy when you come from a very poor country, and then blame the English. And the English have this thing. It's like, well, people, you would have heard people say this, you can't change somebody else, so change yourself. How can I, change this, So we're like, someone comes up and it's like, oh, I'm from a poor country and you've destroyed me. It's like, well, what can I do to help fix this, to remedy this problem? We're looking at problems, other people's problems, saying, how can we remedy them? Other people don't do this. They're like, well, that's your problem. So why do I care, But so they've taken, I think, to an extent, I'm not saying that every English person is good-natured. There's plenty of really unpleasant ones. But as a rule, we're generally a fairly good-natured people. And I think we've had that good nature really seriously taken advantage of. And that's been a big part of it.
Let's pop back to India. A couple of decades ago, I spent months backpacking around India. And every time I spoke to somebody there and they realized I was English, had nothing but praise for England and the English, especially the older they were. And they would talk about, this was about 30 years ago. So I'm talking to people who probably remember when India was still under British rule. And they had nothing but positivity about the English. And I remember being once in Egypt, backpacking around Egypt, and some older guy said something to me that I've never forgotten. And he said, in Egypt, the only things that are standing were built by the pharaohs or the English. Everything we build falls down. And that one statement stuck with me, and he was extremely pro-English. But what you've both just said then makes perfect sense, because politicians always look for someone else to blame. And if there is a world bogeyman now called the English, the British Empire, colonialism, that I can blame all our country's problems on, that means we're not responsible. So we feel slightly better that it's not our fault. They did it to us and we have someone to blame.